There you go.
Boy, she really quickened that up.
That's sweet.
That's true. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna go put my mute on. It is Tuesday, June 7th at 1 p.m. This is our time for our regularly scheduled city commission meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor.
Right, thank you. It is Commissioner Cessna's turn for Pledge of Allegiance and the flag invocation.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us, and thank you for the recent moisture that you have provided to nourish our lands. We come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting to help us make decisions to move our community forward in a positive direction. Be with all of our citizens in the community, but especially be with our first responders and watch over them and keep them safe. In this we pray, amen.
Amen.
Okay, next is approve the minutes. Is there any changes from last meeting's minutes?
They were good.
All right, then they will stand approved with no corrections. Next up, we have public comment. This is time for anybody to come forward and discuss anything with City Commission. We have 30 minutes total, allotment about 5 minutes per person. And this is only for things that aren't already on the agenda. So if you do come up, please come up, state your name, who you're with, and we'll get going. And I believe we have the library here. So we'll let them kick it off.
So I'm Pam Tiller. I am the director at the Finney County Public Library. This is Callie Villanueva. She is our program director. And this is Erin Jimenez. She is our adult services program coordinator.
Okay.
Wanted to share with you some of the things we're doing for summer reading and also share with you how well our kickoff went. Our plan did not go at all. We were going to have Water Day because our theme this year is Oceans of Possibilities. We're in Kansas, so we have a whole lot of oceans around to help us out. But we were going to have Water Day, and it was going to be 57 degrees when we started Water Day on Friday last week, and that wasn't a safe option for our kids, or any of us, really. So we were gifted 2 hours for free entry up to 500 people at one time to Parrot Cove. Wow. And we had 547 people show up.
Wow.
That's awesome. So as some came out, some went in.
We had 547 people show up in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In the first hour.
Oh, my gosh.
So we had so many people say, wow, we've never got to come here before. We're so excited. The kids had never seen inside. It was really great to have that gift of those 2 hours and in a 36-hour planning period. So if anybody goes to Parrot Cove, they did a super great job for us. Their staff is wonderful. Callie has some stats for you on what we already have signed up for summer reading, and then I think Erin is going to share with you some of our events.
So this year we created a website with a program called Beanstack. And what that is they are able to go on to this website and record their own reading, how many minutes they've read. And the goal for summer reading is to read 400 minutes by time summer reading is over for each person, and that's about 50 minutes a week. And so they're able to go in, record their minutes. There's a timer. They can scan the book's barcode and it puts it in there automatically. It's super easy and they enjoy it. On the first day, we got back to the library after our kickoff, which was it had been live, but we had over 156 people signed up already on the first day in a matter of hours. I did check this morning, and we have 247 signed up right now, and that is only, 3 days into the program that we run for 8 weeks. So it is going very well. As you can tell, me and Pam look kind of rough today because we've already been running around going crazy. But yeah, we're looking at a really great summer. And there's also an app for this website. So if you guys want to check it out, it's really cool. We did send out a calendar around for everything that we have going on. If you have any questions, give us a call or come in and stop by and check out our awesome decorations that we put up on Sunday. So.
Hi, so I'm Erin, and I'm just here to talk about some of the events that we're having at the library. So there's kind of a misconception that we only have them for the teeny tiny little patrons, but we have programming events from baby to adult. So we have anything from story times, we have book clubs, we even have like movie evenings for both children and adults. So we just have a little bit of something for everyone. And then one thing that we're really excited about is that we're also taking part of the summer lunch program. A volunteer and I were able to help run that last Saturday, and we're really excited that we had nearly 60 kids show up for lunches. So we always make sure to have something for our community, whether that be free events where they can come in with their families and do stuff together without worrying about prices, or whether it could be Friday or Saturday when we give out lunch to children in the local community. We've had a lot of people compliment our events and compliment us being part of the lunch program, so we're really excited to be able to do this. And I know since we have so many events that it would just be kind of a lot trying to list all of them, but we do have all of them on this calendar for June and July as well. And we also have them at our website. So whether you feel more comfortable with a paper copy or a digital copy, we have events on there for all ages and with little descriptions on what each one is. But we do have them from our teeny tiny babies all the way to our adults, and some events too where families can just come together and enjoy each other's company and meet other families as well.
So one thing I did want to mention that we were not expecting this year, as you can see with the events and stuff that we have on here, we need some help to get this all out and going. So we send out letters and request donations, and we can't do it without those donations. And we've had a lot of people donate and companies donate, and it's been really great. One that kind of blindsided us, we got a letter from the Western Kansas Community Foundation. They gave a grant to Finney County Farm Bureau, and Finney County Farm Bureau awarded us $1,200 for our summer reading program. And like I said, we can't do this without the funding that we get, so we really appreciate that, and we just wanted to share that we were really excited for a gift that we weren't expecting. So.
Do you guys have any questions or want more information about anything?
Very exciting.
No, thank you
so.
for all that you do for the community.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There are
Good
adult
job.
programs and there's adult reading, so
All right.
Yes.
Great.
We also take volunteer readers, so.
Yeah.
we've had some.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else from public for public comment? All right, looks like we can move on.
Item 6A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve requests from Sean Collins, president of the Tumbleweed Festival, Inc., for the 30th Annual Tumbleweed Festival. These items are the ones on their total list of requests that require the governing body's consideration. 1 through 4, I believe, could be taken all as one motion. The first one's for the use of and waiver of fees for the West Green at Lee Richardson Zoo. The second one is allowing volunteers to drive in gates at no charge. And the third is waiver of code sections 635 and 6133 to allow possession, consumption, and sale of cereal malt beverage alcoholic liquors. Number 4 is a waiver of the sign code to place no more than 4 banners on private properties on Mary Street and Kansas Avenue with the approval of landowners. So I believe there's a memo that has those items listed. And if you've got any questions, staff would be glad to try to answer those.
These are the traditional ones that are requested.
Not
Correct.
sure about number 4. Can somebody speak, staff speak to whether or not 4 is a request that's been made in the past?
Mayor?
Zoo,
Oh, I
go
think-
ahead. Zoo staff, okay with this? I know we've done this in the past, but I know this staff has to be there some additional time for this event, right?
Yeah, as far as all the requests of the zoo, they're all the same ones that
Okay.
we've done in the past.
Okay. You were going to say something?
Yes, I do believe that number 4 has been, it's similar to what they've requested in the past.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the request as presented for the Tumbleweed Festival.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
A report of the city manager, just call your attention to the generosity of the Finnip Foundation Trust. They awarded us $208,301.16. This covers annual park initiatives for the purpose of the improvement of Finnip Scout Park and Lee Richardson Zoo in Finnip Park. The city's one of 3 endowed recipients of funds on an annual basis from the Finnip Foundation Trust, and our staff submitted requests to them, and they were funded in full. In addition to that, you'll remember last year, the Finnip Foundation approved a commitment over several years to pay for the splash pad at Garden Rapids, and we're very thankful for that, and it helped offset some unforeseen costs associated with the splash pad, and they made a payment, an initial partial payment last year. The amount included here, which is the differential between $208,000 and $81,000, pays off the balance of that commitment. So that's paid in full now, and certainly appreciate the generosity of the Finnip Foundation Trust. We've got staff reports, B through D. If you've got questions on those or comments related to those, we stand ready to answer any questions. Not hearing any?
I was going to just say the emplanements look really good at Garden City Regional Airport for April, and the sales tax just keeps continuing to increase. So I think highest, if I wasn't mistaken, the highest number actually I've seen on the sales tax. So we're getting there.
It's good, yes.
It's good.
Very good trend. The meetings of note, just a lot of stuff going on over the next couple of weeks. June 10th is an airport terminal groundbreaking, and we'd just like to call, I know you all are aware, but call attention to that. One more chance to say something to the community, those interested in the airport terminal project and wanting to celebrate that major accomplishment and the cumulative, a cumulative project of decades of work. Please show up at a little before 10:30 a.m. I have a feeling that parking between a busy airport already and the amount of interest that is in this event, I would highly recommend allowing enough time to get there early and be in place by 10:30. We're ready for item 9A. That's the appropriation ordinance. If approved, it would be number 2556-2022A.
I'll make a motion we approve appropriation ordinance number 2556-2022A.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider and adopt an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the location, uses, and conditions of businesses licensed to sell cereal malt beverage. And if approved, this would be ordinance number 2929-2022. Jimmy? Oh, I'm sorry, Danielle.
Hello, good afternoon. I am before you to review this ordinance. It did come before you at a pre-meeting on April 5th earlier this year. I won't redo all of that presentation that you all heard during that, but in short, I'll kind of summarize kind of generally speaking what this ordinance will do. So as you know, there have been a number of changes to state statute over the years related to licensure related to cereal malt beverages as well as alcoholic liquor. This has resulted in city code being more restrictive than what is currently permitted under state law. So as a result, our current city code prohibits the sale of any cereal malt beverage and alcoholic liquor within 200 feet of schools, colleges, and churches with no waiver provision allowed. Current state statute, on the other hand, does allow for some additional flexibility, which is what's being presented to you this afternoon. So in short, the proposed changes would help bridge the gap between where our current policy lands and what is permitted currently under Kansas state statute. So those three general changes would be the removal of the 200-foot location restriction for businesses that are located in the core commercial district and that sell cereal, malt beverage, and or alcoholic liquor for on-premise consumption by right. So they would have the ability to do that. It would also remove that 200-foot location restriction for businesses that are in the core commercial district that have a retailer's license for off-premise consumption. So these would be things like a liquor store with additional governing body approval to waive that location restriction. So that would require an additional action from you all to proceed. There are a few other kind of smaller changes in this ordinance that kind of help with some of the language and kind of clean up that language between our current code and what's currently in Kansas state statute. The biggest changes kind of related to this cleanup effort are that via state statute, it no longer requires a cereal malt beverage license in addition to an alcoholic liquor license. The liquor license for most businesses now also captures cereal malt beverage. The other major change that came out of some of the discussions that we had at that pre-meeting a couple months ago was just some kind of cleanup language and additional clarification related to the legacy or grandfathering language, as well as that newcomer provision. So based on the conversation, we just cleaned that up a little bit, made it a little bit clearer to understand. We did pass out updated ordinances. We found another kind of typo as we were going through kind of final review of this, so you all have the most updated version in front of you. The memo does kind of outline specifically what sections of the code are being recommended to change. Jimmy is also here to answer any questions that you all may have. We are recommending adoption of this ordinance, which is alternative A that is before you today. But like I said, staff would be happy to answer any questions, and Jimmy is also here if you have some technical questions.
So no major changes in the, there was just a typo then? Nothing major changed in the ordinance in front of us that was handed out?
From the packet.
Yes, so Commissioner
This one.
Cessna, if you look at section 6-129, in the version that you have, there was previously a subsection H and I, which was really a duplication of what is F and G. So
Okay.
there were two extra provisions that were supposed to be removed, but they were not removed, so now they are
Okay.
removed.
Okay.
So is core commercial district, is it identified or is it designated in this ordinance, or how do they determine a core? So how do you say that if you are a business, how do you say core commercial district? How are you identifying a core commercial district, or how shall that be identified?
So the ordinance language borrows from state statute, which refers to another state statute.
Yeah.
The definition, which is fun. The definition, though, it essentially says that it's a business that is akin to core commercial district. That's what is the actual term core commercial district is used in that cross-reference statute.
So do we designate those? I mean, I'm assuming Main Street is a core commercial district. Is Shulman Crossing a core commercial district? Or will the new development be core, that's gonna be across from the Garden City Plaza, will that be a core commercial district? Or how are they defining that? That's what I make sure when we talk about core commercial districts that anyone just can't pop up and say, hey, I'm a core commercial district.
Yes, and I'll just read the statutory definition of that for you, Commissioner. It means an area of a city or unincorporated area of a county characterized by a variety of compact commercial, office, residential, and public uses that is most directly analogous to central business districts commonly identified by zoning regulations.
So is that a C3 in our case?
That is yeah, I was trying to figure out how that was going, how do we make sure that you just can't up and say, hey, I'm now, so that you could actually, you could actually skirt the regulations that we're updating and hopefully modernizing, to make sure there was state statutes, so.
Right.
Yes, and I believe we discussed that with Trent, and it was his opinion that there are no other districts in Garden City besides the CBD that would qualify. Trent, I'll let you talk.
No, yeah, you're right. So for this ordinance change, it's specifically to our C3. That's the only designated commercial district for this. Those boundaries are defined. So unless we feel at some future time to come and rezone a bunch of areas to that same, if there was interest, I guess, to make another C3 district, but currently it's just what we have identified.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification.
I just had a quick question that was asked to me, and I couldn't answer it, about the 200-foot restriction and how and why it's different for churches versus schools or colleges. Schools or colleges, it's the outside wall to the property line, but churches, it's wall to wall. Why is there a difference between the two?
Well, this was the existing language in the ordinance, so I'm not quite sure what the considerations of the governing body were. I believe this was in 2004.
Okay.
So, Trent, Alicia, do you have any additional information on that?
I don't know that I have new information about the history of why it is the way it is. That is how it reads. Obviously, this takes that barrier away in this area only. All of our other areas would still be to those same language, wall to wall or to the property line.
Okay. Thanks.
I guess looking into this, going from the school, the property line, I guess that would be to give greater protections to schools that might have activities outside of just a traditional building, such as playgrounds, parking lots, and all of that, since it's more of a campus situation. So.
Okay.
Of course, churches are becoming more campus-like, so that's the thing. Some of the larger churches have, a lot of space and almost like a campus-like feel. So I'm curious about why we just wouldn't generalize or make the language the same for everything.
But I don't think this is addressing that
No,
specific
this is
issue
taking that apart.
at this time.
Yeah,
So.
right.
Yeah, we'd be certainly happy to take a look at that for future changes to the ordinance, other things that we might find that need to be updated. We were not necessarily focused on that part of the ordinance. We're looking at updating it from state statute in relation to state statute, but that's not saying we can't go back and take a look at it again.
Sure. Thanks.
I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance 2929-2022.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12A, Janet Burr, Executive Director of Downtown Vision Inc., is here to provide a quarterly update and budget requests to the governing body. So I'd like to welcome the new Executive Director of Downtown Vision, Janet.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
I will have them hand out the downtown event calendar, which I will highlight in a little bit. I am a former 4-H'er, so it will be hard for me to stay and not move around from this microphone. Today, I am going to discuss a little bit on downtown vision. So first, I am Janet Burr. I grew up in this area. Some of you may know me as Janet Hyman. I graduated from Garden City High School. I attended Garden City Community College, and I got my degree from Friends in Human Resource Management. So my husband, Chris, was active duty in the military, so we had to leave Garden City because we couldn't quite fulfill that here in town. So he did that for about 20 years and decided to retire, and he got a call from Dr. Carlin and Heath Hogan saying, hey, we heard you were going to retire. How about coming back to Garden City? And we actually jumped on the opportunity. We grew up here. I still have family and friends here. And my husband is the GROTC instructor for Garden City High School. So I want to give a little background on why I decided to do Downtown Vision, and then we'll go into what's going on with it. I started this position on May 11th, so I've almost hit 1 month here. So when I was growing up, so we'll go back and we'll probably tell my age a little bit when we take a trip downtown. I can remember coming into town, and some of the places we stopped to visit with my parents were Jarmers to buy appliances, Tottentine, Little Britches, Kindle at Kep's. A lot of those places, a few of them, are still open, and it is so nice to go see them kind of being their cheerleader now, not just their customer. So when I started this position, the first question they asked is, Janet, what are you going to do in this job? What's your goal? What's your first things you're going to do in this position? And I said, I will visit every business that we represent. And they looked at me. I think they thought I was crazy. And I did not realize until day one how big the downtown vision corridor is. So maybe I understand now. But I do want to say I did see the 8th Street businesses, and they are very happy with the work that you guys approved to have done. So I say thank you to that. And then I want to do a couple stories about a couple businesses, and then we'll go right into the calendar and kind of what's going on with Downtown Vision. And then if you have any questions for me. So one of my stories is going to be about one of the founders of Downtown Vision, which is Kendall Kepley. When I went to visit the store, I don't know how many of you can go into a men's store, and we have several men on the commissioner, and he can look at you, and he can tell you your exact suit size, pant size, shirt size, tie, shoes, socks, outfit you, and walk out. I tell you, my husband loves it because he doesn't want to be shopping. Anyway, when I went to visit Kendall, it was kind of a nice trip down memory lane. He still does what he's always done and been able to tell you exactly what you need. And it is a blessing for this community to have a men's store. The second person I'm going to tell you about is Mariah Magana. Do any of you know Mariah? She is a new business owner in downtown Garden City. She started her business in her house at the age of 16 years old. At age 19, she now has a business in downtown Garden City. If you go next door to Escape the Clock, you can go in the door, and her store is on the left side. We have a lot to learn from Mariah for trying to start a successful business at age 19, and Downtown Vision is going to learn from her as she recently joined our board. The other person we recently added to our board is Jude Neer, and Jude is the owner of Vava Vintage on 8th Street. I think when you guys did that amazing improvement on 8th Street, that it meant that we needed to have a representative from the 8th Street corridor on our downtown vision, so she agreed and the board approved her to join us. So the next thing I kind of want to highlight is some of why we're visiting businesses, and it's kind of just to let them know that we're their cheerleader and we're here to support them. And one of the things I noticed when I did come on board is that our memberships were down. And I think for that to increase, people have to know someone's supporting them and someone's their cheerleader, someone to ask questions to, someone to be there for them. So I believe that once our relationships are set, that it kind of solves all the other problems of our sponsorships for events and people having trust in Downtown Vision again. Now, if you want to take a look at the calendar, I think I might have handed them all out, so I might need to get one of them from you.
Oh, there's one right there. Okay.
There's a lot. I can't memorize all those. So we just came off a really busy weekend. We had Food Truck Friday, and they said it was one of their best days on Friday. Then we rolled right into Beef, Beer, and Booze with our sponsor of Western State Bank and Flat Mountain Brew House. And that was a busy event. That was my first time to attend the event, and we ran out of beer. But that's a good, I guess that's a good sign that people are coming out to our events. So that's great to hear. I think for when we look over the calendar, I really encourage you guys to come downtown, support local, and just get to know the community. A few of the items that are coming up are your big ones we do have the concert series in Silver Screen. We have the Art in the Park, the 4th of July Parade, and always the Food Truck Friday. And I saw Matt down there last Friday. There was a lot of city staff, and that's nice to see the partnership and in the community. And I also want to thank Aaron with Parks and Rec. They were very helpful with getting us all set up for the Beef, Beer, and Booths, and I have to commend that as a new person starting out and everything's new. I'm very appreciative of all the partnerships. It speaks highly of the community, and it's going to make my position a lot easier. One of the things that a lot of people like is the summer sidewalk sale going into the banner art walk. I'm going to stop on this one and make a little point on this one. The board voted before I joined Downtown Vision to do a partnership with the Garden City Arts. And I really think this is going to kind of revive the banner art walk and the banner auction. So our partnership with Katie will allow, I think, this to kind of expand and open up a new market that we haven't had. And she is amazing, and she really relates to the different artists. And this year, we had to turn artists away. And so that hasn't happened in quite a while. And so I think you're going to see some of the best, and we have some coming from out of state even. So we appreciate their participation with us. And the big one, the Garden City Fall Fest. So we're busy trying to get that all coordinated, and then we'll roll right into the December events. I encourage you to please post this in your place of business or break rooms or wherever you're located, just to encourage people to come downtown. And then on the budget, I worked on the budget after, I think, being here about a week. I think you'll see a small increase in what Downtown Vision is going to ask for. It is kind of difficult to kind of plan after just being on the job a couple of weeks, but based on what I've seen, until I know and I can establish some of those relationships and bring back the memberships and the sponsorships, I think it will happen in 2023, but I'm just pretty new on board, and I want to get those established.
All right.
Looks good. Good job.
Thank you.
And welcome back to Garden City.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Great story.
Welcome. It's a good project.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Janet.
Appreciate the update. And for the commissioners' benefit, our partner agencies, we include their requested amounts. We do the same thing for the Development Corporation in the proposed budget, and then the commission can choose whether or not they take up a discussion around one or both of those when you get to that point in the review of the general fund. So, all right, there's no action needed on that item. So we'll move to B, 12B. This is the governing body being asked to consider and approve an additional distribution of community grant funds as recommended by the Community Health Advisory Board. I see on the bench you have a letter from Colleen Dries, who I'm guessing provided this since she would be unable to attend, but there's a background memo from Stuart. I'll let him read through that, and then we can address Colleen's letter.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. So this is some additional community grant requests and distribution. As with a lot of the grants this year, this is a bit of an unusual case. Traditionally, the Community Health Advisory Board has understood that any funds that weren't spent on the community grant in one year would roll over to the next year. And upon some investigation by Finance Director Kuhlman, we realized that that's actually not the case. Those funds haven't been budgeted, and fortunately that hasn't caused any problems, but we don't want to just be pulling funds that weren't budgeted. However, since the earlier allocations of this year were sort of devised with the idea of having additional funds in mind, the Community Health Advisory Board is requesting that they're able to spend some of the funds that they thought they had. So that would be the total of $5,504.92 to help contribute to some of these requests and potentially save a little bit from emergency requests, with the understanding that funds would not roll over to any future year. So this would be the last time they would do this. And I can go ahead and read through Colleen's letter because I think that summarizes a lot of their reasoning pretty well. So she says, City Commissioners, I'm writing to you on behalf of the Community Health Advisory Board, where I currently serve as the board president. I've served on this board for the past 5 years. Each year we consider several grant submissions to award through the community grant opportunity. And for the past 5 years, it has been the board's understanding that if we do not award our full allocation each year, that we can roll over the remaining amount to the following year. This year, when considering grant applications, it was our intent to have a remainder of $5,504.92 that we may award to any applications we may receive for the remainder of the year or roll over to an amount to next year's allocation. We have previously granted funds after the deadline for emergency requests and from area organizations. We understand that several of our outstanding community organizations are underfunded, and sometimes equipment breaks and unexpected expenses can be required in a short time frame. We've recently been notified that we are not allowed to roll over these remaining funds from the year, and that instead of the $5,504.92 that we were expecting, in reality we only have $269.92. We received a grant request from communities and schools, and we would like to award this very worthy cause for $4,500 to support this program. We are unable to do this unless the City Commissioners are willing to allow us to roll over that $5,504.92 that we'd been expecting to have. We're requesting the City Commissioners allow the carryover practice to occur for the remainder of this year, with the Community Health Advisory Board's full understanding that this practice will not be allowed next year. Thank you for your time and consideration. Colleen Drees, Community Health Advisory Board President. And so that you can see the request in question at the bottom of the agenda item. We had a $5,000 request from communities and schools that was pushed back to $4,500. There was also the request from Oscar Rivera regarding Ad Astra Soccer. With how tight the funding has been and the fact that the board wasn't even sure they would get any additional funds, and just the fact that Mr. Rivera did not formally apply through the grant program, the Community Health Advisory Board recommended against providing funding, but do strongly encourage him to apply through the grant next year. But the alternatives for this are to approve CHAB's recommendations to award $4,500 in community grant fundings to communities and schools. Alternative 2, to modify CHAB's recommendation to award funding as the governing body sees fit. Or Alternative 3, do not approve CHAB's recommendation and send the item back to CHAB for further review. CHAB recommends Alternative 1, and $269.92 of this would come out specifically at the community grant budget item, and then the remaining funding would come out of the social funding line item or budget, which I've checked with our finance director. There is funding there to cover that if the governing body sees it appropriate.
So I don't know the name, did Oscar apply or did he not apply to this?
He did not apply, so we ended up taking his request to the Community Health Advisory Board because we determined that that would be the appropriate place to bring his request, but he never submitted a formal request for the grant.
Right, the only thing I saw was the pamphlet. I didn't see an application.
Did Communities and Schools applies for the first time, or they're just, this is the one that
they applied late, so the reason that the Community Health Advisory Board wanted to help them is they were going through some major staff overturn in January when the deadline came. So they really didn't have the time to reasonably get an application in. So I think by the time their new person started, it was already too late to really get working on that.
But they have somebody within their organization that applies, not locally, but somebody out
That's
of
what I thought.
Right.
their office
Like
that applies,
Lawrence?
yes, that applies for the grants, not, and they met other grant deadlines. So,
That was not what we were told, but that is good to know.
So I'm curious, so the 31,000, so they thought they had additional dollars left because of a calculation based on the grants they had already awarded, or based on what they assumed they already had from the rollover amount?
Jared's.
That's why I couldn't figure out where they thought they had additional money, so.
So this is budgeted from the general fund in the capital improvement section, and it's an annual amount that the city commission has set aside in the annual budget. Over the last few years, CHAB has had the understanding that if they didn't expense it, that those funds would remain available next year. Well, that's not really how the general fund works. We do have some options where we do set aside money that's not expensed in a given year for a certain purpose, but that was not happening with these funds. And so while CHAB thought they had more funds available, in reality they were budgeted the same amount, that annual amount. And so last year they expensed over what was budgeted due to their understanding that they had excess funds. This year their request would come in higher, and that's what caused me to do the investigation, kind of dig into, okay, where is this misunderstanding coming from? There was some, in the math that CHAB had done, they had miscalculated some of their disbursements, so the math that they had for their rollover was actually incorrect, which was a big reason why we don't do this. So in all, they expensed almost the full authority of their 2022 approved budget. So if we do make the recommendation, if the governing body approves this, we would amend the 2022 budget number in the revisions that come up at the next commission meeting. So when you see the general fund, you would see this increase in that social funding line, which does the community grant as well as the art grant. Both come out of that same GL.
I think the first year where there was an appropriation that happened more than on one occasion. So the ads go out towards the end of the calendar year, which is also our fiscal year, for appropriation as soon as reasonably possible after January or February. And there was a year, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where the committee made a recommendation to the staff that not all of it be expended. Later on in that year, same year, there was a situation, I believe, with the community daycare that the commission and/or with a recommendation from the committee and staff that be a resource that could be devoted to that. There were funds in that line item. It all occurred within the same calendar year. Jared described that there isn't a rollover. There is an option, but it's never been used. You can transfer out of a line item. It isn't a fund. It's a line item within a department of the general fund. Line items could transfer into the 05 fund. The commission approves a transfer into the 05 fund every year for projects that, a lot of times capital projects that don't get realized, but the funds have been appropriated, so you sit them there to kind of hold those funds. At least over the last 5 years we've looked back, there's never been a transfer into the 05 fund of this line item. And notwithstanding that, the Community Health Advisory Board believed that was the case, that's what they believed to be the case, but administratively that isn't what happens. So they make a recommendation to the commission. The commission appropriates the money, not the committee. Right. They make a recommendation to you how to appropriate it. So if you want to do it, like last year, there was $35,000 budgeted. Last year, the commission authorized $37,000 and change in disbursement. So there have been years where you've awarded more than that 35, and I'm not exactly sure why that was the case, but it appears that there was $37,607 expended out of that line item last year. And it really just, line items in the general fund can be expended over the budgeted amount of the line item, provided the whole general fund doesn't go over budget. So that leaves you theoretically a few $1 million to play with, but it's also the balancing number that you use in the creation of in this case, the 2023 budget.
Well, that was my question, because I remembered, I was on the commission at the time when that happened, when they came again to ask for that emergency funding. So I was gonna just ask, do we, without, you already answered the question, that there is no rollover in that, and that was gonna be my question, but you answered
You know,
that.
since that time, and I think it's a fairly good practice, and I think it gives the advisory board really kind of a context in which to make these recommendations. Or, you know, you have 35,000 budgeted, so make a recommendation of 35,000. You know, if you get 32,000 in requests, do you just automatically do the whole amount, or do you still scrutinize the applications, thinking that there could be a time down the road later in the year that something comes up of an emergency nature? Really, that first year was probably the best example of that. You know, do you want to keep some in play also for when people come and make a request, which was the case in the Ad Astra, they come and make a request afterwards. If it merits funding, and if the advisory board thinks it merits funding, there is the potential that if the first wave doesn't generate what the advisory board or the commission feels is worthy of community grant funding, that there may be resources for things that come along later in the year. I don't believe we have, well, I'll just leave it at that.
So one of the things that I'm just thinking about is what Oscar's role in this is we talk about equality of how things work in our system and in our city. And I do think when we talk about equality, we have to talk about there is an equality of people that are professional nonprofits that know how to work the systems. I guess not in this case because they didn't get it in on time, but no, in general, these are grants. This is what you have to do to get a grant. This is what you have to do. And their organization is professionally a nonprofit versus some of these people like Oscar, who is trying to do what he can without having, the money to do it. He's just doing it to get it done. And so that's where I'm just having a little bit of a strong, because I know he's going around and still trying to get the money raised to get those kids to Barcelona. He's been in the economic development office and trying to brainstorm who he can go talk to, and has made a little bit of progress on that goal. But I can't believe if he would have actually been aware that he was in this sort of consideration, that he would have actually done the steps if he knew those steps were there. And he had the ability to have, so some people don't have the ability to do computer-based applications and all that sort of thing. So just one extra kind of layer of.
Can you remind me again when the original deadline was?
Don't remember the
Just
exact-
even the month, like,
It was January.
okay.
Well, I think the Community Health Advisory Board does an excellent job of managing the grants.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think that the Communities and Schools is a worthy organization. But going over budget, understanding, there is that danger also of not spending the money thinking that, we're going to hold it over and something would happen. But I do think it's a good practice. Those dollars are there so that organizations within the community, can actually get some funding. I agree with the mayor in the sense that there are worthy causes of people who do not know how to write grants, or they don't have an idea about what that looks like or the process. And so lots of times they're either are locked out or blocked out because they don't have that understanding. And they could go to people who do have that understanding or have offered to help. So it's the hard thing with the Communities and Schools is that, we don't really have the money. The money's already been spent, and I think I'm looking at what they've already spent the dollars on, and it's been really, really good. And I just, but that practice of, we thought we had money and we didn't, and that to me seems, and this isn't one of those emergency situations like, Commissioner Cessna talked about. With the Communities and Schools, I think it was a refrigeration or a freezer or something where they couldn't even.
Community daycare, water heater.
Community daycare.
Where they couldn't even keep, they had to have that, so.
Yeah.
And this is more of a staffing or a budget shortage that way. So, it doesn't really fit that same criteria of what we did, so it's not really an emergency in my.
My issue comes with it being turned in late. they probably did have major staffing changes, and yes, they are a very good nonprofit, very good organization. However, the people who write grants have been there for a while. And so I don't know where the disconnect was.
I'll make a motion that we do not approve the CHAB's recommendation to send the item back to the Community Health Advisory Board for further review.
That'd be alternative 3?
3, yes.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? The one thing I'd like to say before we take a vote is I think that if this does get approved, we should probably make sure Oscar is aware that this is out there. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Can I double
Mayor?
check something in this with Jared? The last paragraph of this says CHAB intends to budget the remaining $1,004.92 of rollover funds for emergency requests. Is that if the commission authorized an additional $5504.92?
Yes, that would be.
Minus 45 plus 260. I guess there's a lot of numbers floating around in here, and they're sourced by something other than our finance department. So I would rather have our finance department administer our finances.
So CHAB has, the authority for this year has been expensed all but $269.92. So that's their number. If there was an additional amount that you chose to allocate in the 2022 revised, then they could have reserved that $1,004. But right now, as it stands with no additional changes by the governing body, $269.92 is available.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. And again, this is a number the commission sets in budgeting purposes, right? When we go through the budget, there's that line item that we set.
Correct. So we set the
number.
social funding line item. The GL is for the community grant and the art grant together. Those are set. So we're setting in 2 weeks, we'll do the 2023 budget. So you set it out, but the year prior. And then in the 2022 or in the current year, we can amend and adjust those numbers. But you're setting that out for the following year.
Right. Thank you.
Item 12C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an amendment to the development agreement for 2107 East Kansas LLC to allow construction of buildings to begin on certain lots before infrastructure improvements. Trent? Or
Mayor and Commissioners, the governing body is asked to review and consider an amendment to the development agreement for 2107 East Kansas LLC, also known as Campus in Kansas. The developer, 2107 East Kansas LLC, has requested to begin construction of Lot 1, Block 3, and Lots 1 and 2 of Block 2, collectively known as preliminary lots, as depicted in Exhibit 1 prior to the acceptance of the street infrastructure by the governing body as required by the Garden City subdivision regulations. The development agreement for 2107 East Kansas LLC was approved by the governing body on June 18th, 2019. Staff has reviewed the request by the developer and would allow for construction of the preliminary lots before acceptance of the street infrastructure with the conditions outlined in the development agreement. A certificate of occupancy will not be issued for any of the preliminary lots until the infrastructure has been completed and accepted by the governing body. The proposed amendment to the development agreement is attached. Your alternatives are: the governing body may approve the amendment to the development agreement as presented. The governing body may approve the amendment to the development agreement with changes. Or 2, the governing body may not approve the amendment to the development agreement. Staff would recommend alternative 1, and there are no fiscal obligations from the city under the CID. So staff is here. We can answer any questions that you may have. Matt Bennett from First National Bank is also here if you guys have any questions for him.
To what extent are you going to actually have them put in infrastructure before you give them that certificate of occupancy? Is that the full, the total site?
That would be the total site,
Okay.
correct.
And if there's a problem with that infrastructure, and we're talking the building's ready to go, but part of that needs to be redone, then that occupancy won't be granted until the infrastructure is
That is
accepted.
correct.
Not just built, but accepted.
Correct.
Right.
I'll make a motion, we approve the amendment to the development agreement as presented.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item D, 12D, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an amendment to the existing master service agreement with Revere Healthcare Services to extend mental wellness services. Jared?
Good afternoon. At the August 3rd, 2021 City Commission meeting, the governing body approved an addendum to the master service agreement with Revere Healthcare Solutions to add mental wellness services. The addition of mental wellness as a service provided by RHS was paid by the city utilizing $54,000 of the ARPA money received in 2021. The addendum provided for 10 clinical hours of mental wellness services a week for 50 weeks per year, or approximately 42 visits per month. RHS staff and city staff have met and reviewed the utilization of the mental wellness services provided by RHS, and utilization has continued to increase month over month. Since the service began in September 2021, the monthly utilization includes no-shows as in the table below. You can see it's definitely increased as we've gone. In discussions with RHS and city staff, RHS has been willing to increase the load of utilization by city staff without increasing the cost assessed until a more definitive baseline of utilization could be established. This has constituted increased costs experienced by RHS. At this time, RHS has requested a new addendum to the master service agreement be approved, which increases the amount of visits available each month for city staff. The addendum provides 60 mental wellness visits per month to city staff at a monthly cost of $10,500. Any visits in excess of the 60 available would be provided at a per cost visit of $200. The addendum provides that if a particular month has less than the full 60 visits used, a credit will be provided to the city at a rate of $175 per visit and will be accounted for as a reduction in the monthly base fee for services provided by RHS. The addendum would take effect on July 1st, 2022 and would be in effect for 12 consecutive months until June 30th, 2023. July and August 2022 were included in the previously approved addendum with a cost of $4,500 per month. The $9,000 previously paid would be provided as a credit to the city, bringing the total one-time cost of this addendum to $117,000. The cost for mental wellness services was included in the allocation of ARPA funds in 2021. The city will again be receiving ARPA funds in 2022, which could be used to provide the cost of $117,000 for the provision of mental wellness services with RHS through June 2023. Your alternatives are to approve the addendum of the master service agreement with Revere Healthcare Services to increase mental wellness services, or to not approve the addendum. Staff recommends approval. As a fiscal note, if the governing body chooses, the $117,000 lump sum payment could be expensed from the ARPA fund, which is Fund 021. Other uses of this funding for this year have not yet been completely determined. I open up for any questions.
Do we have enough, my only question was, is that lump sum in the fiscal note, is there enough funding in that ledger?
There
to
will
approve
be
that?
when we
Okay.
finalize and make this payment. And RHS understands that would occur once the funds are received from
Okay.
the ARPA. So they would be kind of on hold until
Okay.
the funding is received by the city.
So then, so if they credit money back, then at the end of the year, there'll be a settle-up period?
So they
or-
bill us monthly. So if we have any unused in a certain given month, then that would be a credit that reflects on the following month's monthly
So it's
baseline.
accumulated.
And the city's concern was that this baseline has been increasing. We've consistently seen the usage going up.
Yeah.
We're not 100% sure we've seen it peak,
Mhm.
but we think we're close. RHS has been reviewing these numbers. They had a drop. The month you can see, April, the provider was called for jury duty, so that was an odd decrease.
Okay.
Other than that, we've seen that steady 60, 70 is kind of our number. So the city's concern was if we do see a decline and we've fronted the payment, what could be done? So that was Revere's solution for giving that credit back, since we'll have prepaid for the services. And then the city is elevating its baseline so that the $175 per visit cost can be accommodated for 60 visits with the $200 cost above and beyond. So we're kind of hedging our bets a little bit to a number that we feel comfortable with.
Right.
And to this point, we haven't employed, I mean, this was an experiment at the 45, at the initial level. It's kind of expanding that experiment now that, we had a hypothesis that there would be an interest in this type of service, that it was a good addition to our kind of total wellness viewpoint of providing benefits to our workforce. So this is kind of, I would say, a stage 2 experiment. Obviously without the benefit in future years of ARPA funds or other one-time revenue sources, we're using the one-time revenue source to experiment with where the edge of service needed is, and try to destigmatize and encourage people to use the service. At this point in time, we haven't employed anything like curtailing the frequency of use. Like, right now, it could be, weekly or biweekly visits, and, at some point we'll purchase an amount, and if it runs in that we have more demand, folks are having trouble finding slots, we could set a limit as to the frequency of visits or those types of things. If the money weren't available in future years or out years, but just for the benefit of the commission, knowing we're looking at this as a sustainable benefit, and right, I would say a little more than a year ago, we had no clue what the demand was, and this was an explicit eligible use of the funds, and we thought it was an appropriate time to test a theory, and grateful for the opportunity to expand the experiment even further, more than double it.
So they didn't break out, because I think, that $200, I mean, out what they're charging now, we have the lump sum, but, now going forward, the no-shows, to me, are a concern that we are charged for those.
So in this addendum, the no-shows would not be included.
Okay,
There's
so
an
then
element of
at
the
the 60,
addendum
then, so the no-shows we wouldn't be charged for, rather.
Correct. Right now, they're included in the numbers of the visits presented in this table, but right now they're included in the numbers of the visits presented in this table, but if we approve the addendum, then Revere will not count those no-shows towards that number.
And so you wouldn't have to pay for those if...
Correct. Yeah, that is an ongoing issue that we're still in discussions, because not just for mental wellness, but for our baseline services, the no-show rate of the city is higher than it should be. There is an added element to the difficulty of rescheduling mental wellness, whereas you could fill a sick visit with someone who was kind of on standby. Mental wellness is pretty pre-scheduled, and so when they do have those no-shows occurs, there is a pretty significant negative impact. And so we've discussed that as well with Revere, but in this addendum, those no-shows would not be included in that 60 visit baseline.
RHS isn't requiring it. We could end up administratively requiring it, though. I don't think we're prohibited from implementing it.
Like a penalty, or?
Yeah, I mean, in-house administering it, because we're paying for capacity that if it's not used, we'll use the carrot, on, attempts 1, 2, and 3,
Right.
but, at some point in time, there has to be a stick.
I'll make the motion, we approve the addendum to the master service agreement with Revere Healthcare Services to increase mental health wellness services.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Item E, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an interlocal agreement between the city and county for continued sanitary sewer services to support the Northwest Development Industrial District. Danielle.
All right, good afternoon. Back in 1999, the city and the Northwest Development Industrial District entered into agreement for use of sanitary sewer services provided by the city, even though that property was located outside of the city boundaries. In May of this year, the county dissolved that district and assumed all assets, which included the existing sanitary sewer lift station as well as the infrastructure. The agreement before you would allow the city to continue to provide sanitary sewer services directly to the county instead of the previously established district. So the services would remain at the existing level of service, would follow all established rate structures as outlined by you all annually. And if approved, the county would be responsible for future infrastructure improvements on the site and payment of all applicable charges and fees. So staff is recommending the first alternative, which is approval of the interlocal agreement for continued sanitary sewer services located on the former Northwest Development Industrial District site. The fiscal impact of this is non-existent. We're really just changing who we're billing those fees and services to. With that, would be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
I'll make a motion, we approve the interlocal agreement as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Item F, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the transfer of ownership of city property to Grace Bible Church. Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. In the process of gaining the required easements for the traffic signals to be located at K-156 and the Jenny Barker intersection, it was discovered back in 2011 when that intersection was completely redone. It created a small triangle of property that ended up being belonging to the city. During that time, the city had indicated that when it was all finished and done, that little triangle of property would go over to the church. They've maintained that property, excuse me, ever since, just like they own it. And so in the process of getting our easements, that was brought up again. So we'd like you to consider an exchange of that little triangle of property. They would then grant us the necessary easements for the traffic signals to be installed and future sidewalks along the west and the south side of that property. The alternatives would be to approve that transfer of ownership located at 2485 North Jenny Barker Road from the city to Grace Bible Church in exchange for the necessary easements for the traffic signals and the sidewalks, or do not approve it. Staff recommends alternative one. The financial impact we estimated to get all the necessary documents done and filed would be less than $1,500. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nope. I move to approve the transfer of ownership of property located at 2485 North Jenny Barker Road from the city to the Grace Bible Church in exchange for the necessary easements for traffic signal and sidewalks.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just had one clarification on the address that said the Grace Bible Church located at 2595 North Jenny Barker. Is the correct address 2485?
The correct answer, I apologize, is 2595 Jenny
Okay.
Barker Road.
In the background, it's
Yes.
Yep. Good catch. I'll amend it to say 2595.
And I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
apologize for the error.
Item 12G, Finance Director Coleman will review some of the tax funds and their support funds.
You ready for part 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will point out, originally on the calendar for the budget process cycle, we had scheduled today to have our audit reviewed as well, but that will be likely at the next commission meeting. It's been postponed shortly. So today we'll be starting with the 040 Bond and Interest Fund. I'll bring your attention to numbers for the transfer capital improvement. Just as a reminder, this is funds that was remaining from the big pool budget that's set aside in the capital improvement reserve for a couple years. We allocated $250,000 last year to help mitigate some of those increased costs of the pool bond and the other bonds. And then $450,000 is being used in the 2022 budget, but that is the last of those funds. And so as you see 2022 and then 2023, there's not really an additional revenue source coming in to help mitigate some of the costs of the increase with our GeoBond costs. For your reference, if you go back to our beginning information, there's the debt info tab has the breakout of the ongoing costs of our principal and interest payments. I will highlight that in 2022, the 2021 Series A bond principal and interest is going to be paid for with the revenue collected from the special .15 sales tax that took over after the horse thief tax ended. And in 2023, we plan to use those funds to cover the 2021 Series A and 2021 Series B principal and interest, so that'll be able to pay a little bit more. So those 2022 Series B is being paid for with bond and interest fund in 2022, but in 2023, it's not budgeted here, which helps a little bit to keep that tax levy allotment down. So those will be both paid for next year and ongoing with that .15 sales tax. So you'll see for 2022 revised, we have interest of just under 800,000 and principal of 2.713,350. There's a 5% coverage budgeted for 2023, which helps to make sure we have some cash available in the fund. But that whole amount will be allocated, leaving our ad valorem tax at a need of 2.6 for this fund for the next year. So as we finish out the general fund at the next meeting, we're trying to put together a whole picture of what those tax amounts look like on our total mill levy. So we should have a preliminary analysis included with our next meeting. Any questions on bond and interest? Okay, moving on, you have the 055 health insurance fund. This is where we pay for all the administrative costs of the health insurance plan for the city. You'll see that the health insurance premium costs have continued to increase, so we're budgeting an increase there. The clinic operational costs, you'll see a shift in 2023 where the costs for internet connection and the other utilities are no longer being included because of our amended agreement with Revere. And so the baseline clinic operational cost increases, but it accommodates the addition of those utility switching to the ownership and responsibility of RHS. You also will see that in this year we had a transfer from the health insurance reserve of $593,450 to help accommodate the costs of this fund. In the past, there's been a practice of at the end of the year taking all of what was budgeted for health insurance from the city's portion, from all the different funds, bringing it into this fund, transferring a portion of that to the health insurance reserve to make sure that stayed high, and then transferring a portion back to the general fund to make sure we offset the costs. The last few years, that practice has not been done, with the idea that at the end of the year, we're going to be doing a more analysis of how much needs to be pulled into this fund, of what's remaining in the budgeted lines, and rather than transferring, just kind of doing a one in. So we'll plan to have another transfer from the health insurance reserve, but at the end of 2022, we anticipate the costs will likely be less in reality than what we budget. And if we do a transfer from the funds and just a necessary component rather than just taking it all and then dispersing it again and again, we should be able to mitigate some of that expected transfer for next year, but we've budgeted it to make sure that we have a viable budget to present to the state. Hopefully that makes sense. We anticipate we won't need that full $610,500 next year, is in a nutshell what I'm going for. Any questions on health insurance? The health insurance reserve, you'll see that we aren't budgeting a revenue coming in since we aren't doing the transfers and moving it around. We always could, if we have a year where we want to build this reserve back up, we can expect and plan a transfer from the health insurance fund. We do have the budgeted expense for this year, $593,450, as well as next year, $610. So you'll see that that takes the cash position of the health insurance reserve, if we were to do both those in the full amounts, from approximately $2.5 million down to about $1.3. So we may, at the end of next year, when we see what the actual transfer number is, determine if we want to build this reserve back up. With us being fully insured, there's not as much of a risk needed for us to hold on to such a high reserve, but it does help when we have additional costs elsewhere. We have some funds to fall back on. All right, moving on to the airport, Fund 060. I will highlight too, there's the documentation behind this fund itself has the breakouts for expenses and revenues, if you have any questions on any of them. The main shift you'll see with the airport amounts have to do with staff. The 2022 revised budget is our current picture of the airport, and our 2023 numbers reflect moving to a full security plan. To accommodate the desire to have larger aircraft come in by American, we would have to have a full security plan in place. That would require additional staff, 24/7 supervision of the airport, security staff, additional maintenance staff, Rochelle's been working on what that plan looks like as far as staffing. There's a shift in some of the maintenance personnel to have a division of duties so that they don't all do everything, but some are specifically operations focused on the airfield and some are more buildings and lands focused. And so this 2023 numbers, you'll see that there's quite a significant spike, especially in the ad valorem tax needed. The airport's revenue sources really don't have a lot of influx over the years. It stays pretty consistent. So this would be if the city desires to move to that full security plan to accommodate the potential for those larger aircraft, there would need to be a larger tax allotment towards the airport funding. And so these numbers reflect the full shift and proposal there to increase staff from 9 positions in 2022 to 20 positions for 2023.
Will the larger aircraft help offset some of the increase in the costs, or are you anticipating, or that won't happen until 2024 when it's fully operational, or?
Would the larger aircraft probably not offset the city's cost? It would be a better opportunity for customers, more seats, more availability for flights. But the city's revenues probably wouldn't see a great flux that would then offset those costs. It would be an ongoing hit to the city to make that an option for the public to be a better service and viable function.
But this is the reason why we're building the
Correct.
new terminal.
Yeah, the whole idea is to use what
and
we're
the reason
building
why
for.
we're building the terminal, we have to have this security plan in place. So
Yes. And so the terminal itself, the construction is being funded. The bond for that will be funded through the 0.15 sales tax. And if there are additional revenues, we could look at alleviating some of the tax burden with those funds. We don't necessarily have a specific idea in mind yet to what those excess funds look like. We anticipate a ballpark number of approximately $1 million, which would cover more or less the bond and interest costs for 2023. If sales tax continue to rise, we see an increase in what that brings in. We would be able to look at using those funds to either potentially offset this or parks projects. The way it was included on the ballot gave us the option of using those funds for the mitigation and aiding the lowering of the property tax stabilization. So depending on the number that comes in, we would have that be an offset potentially as well.
the ridership, I can't remember the name, the fee, the
PFC, passenger
Right.
facility charge.
And that's just mainly for maintenance and, right? Here comes Rochelle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good
that's for,
Yeah, so the revenue on a larger aircraft is gonna be your landing fees just because the aircraft weighs, but that's not substantial. It's only 40 cents per 1,000 pounds, so it's not really gonna add too much revenue, as well as fuel flowage. If they're taking on more fuel on their aircraft, we'll see a little increase, but again, that's 6 cents on every gallon purchased. So you're not gonna see a huge influx in revenue increases. The passenger facility charges would increase because you would have the allocation of more seats to sell. So we get $4.39 off of that, but those funds are strictly allocated to AIP projects, and they have to have, those funding sources have to be dedicated to certain things that are AIP eligible. So we couldn't put them necessarily in the revenue source to fund the general fund. It would have to go into more something like our fund 061 is where the PFC is allocated to, revenues and expenses.
So when you're talking about larger aircraft, how many more seats or?
So the intent initially would be to bring in a CRJ 700, which would be, depending on the aircraft and the seat configuration, could it be anywhere from 62 to 75 seats. Currently, we are served by an Embraer 145, which has 50 seats on it. So you're gonna have more passenger options, so we would actually have a first class. You could have a business class and then regular coach is where I sit. So you have some passenger options as well.
Good, thank you.
So again, as we finish with the general fund next meeting, as we paint that full picture of what that property tax number is looking like, the airport's definitely, if we pursue this route, would need an increased amount of property tax over what we have historically had allocated.
well, I think we're pursuing this route because we
Yes.
approved the terminal, so I don't think it wouldn't be wise to build a terminal and not have a fully funded security protocol in place on it, so.
So you'll see that the main spike, the increase of approximately $700,000 in the increase in the staffing is the main number jump there for the airport. The other expenses are fairly consistent with what's been presented and approved in the past. Rochelle does have in 2022 the tractor bids, which are on for the, on the commission agenda today. And then you have the additional airport improvement amounts set for the future for airport improvement type projects. Any questions on Fund 060?
So I just have a clarification. Are the TSA, are they city employees or are they federal employees?
They are not city employees.
And so then we have to transfer the money to the federal government for them, or how are they?
So they are federal employees and they're paid by the federal government. There's no exchange whatsoever in funding for that. TSA also offsets some of the expenses incurred by the police department because they're required to be out there. So TSA does supplemental some of their costs to help support our airport operations. But yeah, they're federal employees. So the only city employees are basically in charge of the infrastructure and management of the airport. Everybody else are tenants. And so other than their leases with the city that provide us revenue, they have their own entity that supervises and is their employer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And,
you're welcome.
And then with the new terminal, it wouldn't change the ARF services with the fire
Nope.
department, which is
No,
funded?
yeah, so it's tricky with the ARF services. Typically, the FAA is basically 5 daily departures and arrivals, and so we would still be under that. So we would still have the same Class A requirement for ARF vehicles. We do currently provide Class B, which is additional ARF services, but there is no change in requirement regarding ARF with the larger aircraft coming in, unless the frequency increases over 5 flights daily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for airport? Okay, moving on to 061 is the airport improvement. You'll see that there's not a lot of activity planned in this fund. This is normally where we're doing those AIP projects, but with the ongoing terminal construction, that's our main focus and taking the AIP emphasis. So we do have PFC allocations budgeted in 2023 to be, we expect to see some revenues next year from the PFC allocations, but other than that, there won't plan to be any expenses. For 062, this is the fund that's being utilized for the terminal construction. So you see that we have our 2022 number for revenues, to continue to receive revenue from the federal grant for our portion of what was allocated, and then the ongoing costs for the engineering fees and contractor fees for the construction and design, finishing up the design and construction of the
Hey,
terminal.
Rochelle, sorry to interrupt, but going back, weren't we not going to rebuild one of the taxiways?
That is on
Is
our
it-
schedule, but we're not gonna look at that until we get through the terminal building. We
Okay.
do have some bill funding that will be coming down that will have eligible for us. Actually, our engineers will be out on Thursday to provide another analysis of that taxiway because it is starting to deteriorate and fail. So we're looking at allocating those bill funds towards that. However, with so many pots of money coming in, right now we're looking at doing that construction more in 2024 because we have to go through a lot of justification with the FAA paying for that replacement of the concrete.
Sure, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions about airport grant or AIP? There's a lot going on, but the focus is primarily that construction of the terminal. Once that turns around, we'll have a whole list to jump back into for the other needs that the airport will have. Okay, moving on, we have the recreation department next. This is a little quirky in the sense that for 2023 budget, we are planning to bring the recreation department under the general fund. The tax levy that they've historically authorized and levied has gone through the commission, so with it being now under the city, it will actually, the portion of that levy will fall under the general fund levy. And so our review, or your review of this fund at this time, is just the 2022 revised budget. The rec 2023 numbers will be included in the general fund totals that we present at the next meeting. So here, in looking at everything, we did have a decrease in the amount of cash carryover than what we anticipated, and the recreation department would attribute that to the decrease in revenues over what we anticipated for the pool. We had budgeted numbers that did not occur, and so we had a shortfall somewhat in our cash balance carryover expectation. So for 2022, the rec is anticipating to be short of what they would need to be viable to continue on for this year. Now next year, with them being out of the general fund, since they would be part of the total general fund, there's a little bit more flexibility for if a department in the general fund oversees the budget, and the other departments are under budget, as long as the entire fund isn't over budget. We have some flexibility, but with the rec being its own standalone department for this year, in order to accommodate the costs they anticipate to be experienced with the shortfall they experienced with the revenues last year, there is a recommendation for, it's on the second page of their revenues all by itself, is the transfer from ARPA. So one of the elements of what ARPA can be used for is lost revenue. The city actually on its reporting has, there's a $10 million standard deduction for lost revenue. That's what the city has used for its reporting to the treasury of what we're using ARPA funds for. So this would fall under that purvey. And so the anticipation is that if we transferred $450,000 of our allotment for our ARPA funds this year, that would finish the rec fund through the year. And then any additional balance, any cash at the end of the year that was available in the rec fund would be transferred to the general fund or to the rec reserve fund for the reserve to maintain for the future years. So this is a conservative number that we believe would make sure that there's no issue with a shortfall or a cash basis issue for the rec for 2022. So that's the additional revenue line you see at the bottom, which would bring their total amount available to $2,914,000. As you go through, the rec has multiple departments. Again, these will be brought under the general fund, so the numbers will change, the coding will change, but the elements will all remain the same in the 2023 number presentation for the general fund next week. But in operations, you have a large portion of their staff. They have 7 employees authorized in 2022 and 6 in 2023 because they're shifting some staff amongst where they're categorizing them in their departments. We see the total cost of our employee benefits and salaries at $600,000 for the year. Their costs for ongoing maintenance and regular expenses are fairly normal, other than the increase in their consultant fee for the year. Due to some of the studies and things they have going on, that number has been increased. As we go on, you'll see that their numbers for commodities and new equipment are fairly similar to what was budgeted, but due to this increases for the staffing, the number total at the end of the year the end of this year for expenses for operations is $888,000, up from the $711,570. I'll also point out that the only expenses you'll see for 2023 are the transfer general fund and transfer recreation reserve. They're listed at approximately half and half. We could choose to allot that how we see at the end of the year, depending on what cash balance is remaining and what needs we have in the general fund versus how much we want to build up in the rec reserve. But for now, the plan would be that in the beginning of 2023, we'd expense those numbers out. For aquatics, here we have the pool. We've increased the amount for the temporary seasonal line. That's mostly the lifeguards and the pool staff. We also have the recreation specialist, which is a new position for this year. They will handle the pool for the majority of the year, and then special other rec projects, other coordination elements when the pool has its off season. We believe our expenses for the pool are probably a little more accurate after one season. However, we know that was a COVID season and a historically cold season, so we're hoping that our expenses are accurate. We're also more conservatively budgeted our revenues for the pool this year, so if all does according to plan or better, we would actually experience those revenues. But to not put ourselves in the same issue of kind of over anticipating what our revenues would be, we've lowered those down. You'll see here we have chemicals is an increase. They are an amount that we're $27,000 for 2023 revised that wasn't budgeted for 2022 in the original budget. And then the aquatic facility, $40,000 is an amount to set aside in the budget each year to build up a pool reserve more or less, so that if we have one-time expenses, if we need to replace a slide or something major happens, that we have a fund ready and set aside to cover those costs rather than have to allocate that in a budget year that we weren't anticipating. Next you have the arts. This is mostly, historically has had some staff positions, but now is going...
Jerry, can I ask a question? So on that aquatics, how big a reserve are you guys going to try to get to?
I don't know if we have a set number in place right now. We have $40,000 a year. There is some in the capital improvement reserve from before, I believe 20,000-ish is that number. We can build that up, and Aaron might be able to speak that a little better.
So in the original development of the budget, part of what was examined was making sure that there was a rollover. So we could either add new elements to the pool about every 5 years, or as maintenance things pop up, there would be funding there rather than deferring maintenance and pushing that down the line. So there was never a number that was set out there as much as the intention of setting that aside to make sure that we had addressed the maintenance needs as they come up, as well as provide some funding to add new elements to the pool to continually refresh it.
Any other questions on the pool? Okay. Back to arts, you'll see that most of our paid expenses for arts are not staff. There aren't full-time staffs under the arts department, but there are contract services. We have instructors that are paid as contract labor. And so that's the main cost there for the arts, as well as some supplies. So a pretty simple budget there for the arts section of the rec. Athletics, we have 2 positions full-time here, as well as some temporary seasonal and some other. We have increased the cost for contract services slightly to accommodate some of those staff that are not full-time positions, but just the ongoing umpires, things like that. And then you'll also see that the supplies has increased for this year above what was originally budgeted at $60,000. That's a little more on track with what was experienced last year and what those numbers are continuing to look like, with increased costs pretty much across the board. As well as we have our lease agreement here for the Lightner and Operate gymnastics ongoing. So a total expense line for there, 807, up slightly from the 796, 600 originally budgeted. In fitness, we have the 2 budgeted positions for 2022, up to 3 for 2023. That's where the shift from the operations position is coming to this GL, or this department. You can see that cost increases slightly due to that position being transferred over. Other than that, costs are remaining fairly consistent with what was budgeted originally, for a total expense of $470,000, up about $16,000 over 2022 original. And some of that, a portion of that is for the new lease agreement for core equipment that we approved at the end of 2021. So that brings your total recreation expenses for 2022 to $2,834,085, which would leave approximately $80,000 in that cash balance. Again, if we experience less expenses than we anticipate, or if our revenues exceed that, we might have a higher cash balance. If we have that ARPA money transferred in to cover the cost for this year to make sure we're safe, whatever's remaining, we'll be able to go back to the general fund to go back and end up helping there with the cash balance, or building up that rec reserve. We can review that once we know what that number looks like and determine what portion we really want to allocate of that full balance. And there are breakouts of the expenses and revenues. I will note that I provided the PD's E911 fund as the draft, what this should look like. So at the top of all of these on the expense lines is Garden City Police Department Wireless E911, but that is not what this is coming from. So just trying to make sure you're staying on your toes and paying attention. And then behind all of the documentation, the last fund is the Rec Reserve. This is Fund 073. There's revenues coming in this year. We are starting to see the reimbursements from the Special Parks and Rec Fund for $25,000 a year for the golf carts that are being purchased. Those haven't been delivered yet. Those will be expensed out this year from this fund. But that money will be paid back over 5 years from the Special Parks and Rec Fund. And then we also have other expenses for, I believe it was some of the lease equipment upfront costs that came out of this Rec Reserve. So this would be a number that we would anticipate building up. There's also, in the 2023, you can see that there's a transfer from the general fund. That would be when we shift the rec department to the general fund. We would still plan to set aside a number and have an expense each year that builds up this reserve from their budget in the general fund. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Thanks.
I think we're ready for or item H is an executive session. There's no action anticipated after that, so we'll take the consent agenda and unless you want to pull off one of the items and talk about it specifically, or very specifically, if there's more than one, the appropriate motion would be to approve consent agenda items I1 through I6.
I'll make the motion. We approve the consent agenda items I1 through 6.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes.
We want to do Commissioner reports and then do the executive session.
You right. Commissioner Cessna.
Very good pre-meeting this morning on kind of the 30,000-foot overview of kind of where they're at on the master plan for the Park and Recs master plan. I did attend the Bright Blue Health Center ribbon cutting. That's a great addition to the community, as well as also for the Tyson team members in our community. I mentioned it earlier, but good sales tax number for the month, shows we're open and here on business, and welcome anybody to come in and shop locally and shop often. I'd like to welcome our new superintendent, Dr. Mike Dominguez. I'm taking him around and getting him acclimated to the community and visiting with a number of people in the community. So if you see him out in the community, please welcome him. I want to congratulate Randy Ralston on being appointed to the vacant position on the school board. That was nice to have law enforcement on the school board kind of help, especially with things happening in our nation right now. So give that perspective. So that's all I've got.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yeah, a lot happened this past couple weeks. So with of course, everything, the food truck Friday, I attended that. I had a sweet tooth, so I had to go get me a little funnel cake. So, but yeah, thanks for Janet to step up and fill that position. It's kind of exciting to see her walk around and introduce herself to each business. She came in to our office and introduced herself. So really look forward to helping her in anything that she needs as far as just education-wise or history-wise. And that's kind of exciting to see everybody out and just enjoying a nice day this last Friday. So, and there's lots of things that come. So thanks for the calendars and all that have been put out. Speaking of calendars, there's a lot more coming up. So Garden City website, our team here at the city does a wonderful job of putting calendar events on. And so if you need to do something or if you want to do something, check out the website from Garden City. City's webpage, and they'll list. From there, you can go to like Buffalo Dunes, and they've got a plethora of tournaments coming up. So if you golf, there's lots of golf tournaments coming up, so that you can sign up for those too. Boards, I think most of the boards are pretty full. That's pretty exciting too, to see like all the candidates that put in applications for those positions. So staying connected with the city, that's awesome. So appreciate those candidates who have stepped up. I've kind of been on a big sports kick. This last weekend was also the kickoff for the Wind baseball, so that was exciting. I think they did get a three-game win, so they kind of have a little streak going now. So if you need something to do, go out to the Wind baseball. That's exciting to go see them play and stuff. So yeah, congratulations to the new school superintendent. That's exciting. Yeah, a lot of new things happening. So I think Garden City is well on its way to look at a bright future, and we have been. So it's just exciting to kind of get elevated on what's to come, and exciting pre-meeting, opening of the shooting range. There's just lots of things to cover. Exciting for the comprehensive plan to come out soon, and just to see all of the community's input and stuff like that put on plan. So if you haven't seen that, go online. That's going around too for a survey. So get your input in. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Euler?
Yeah, it was, I enjoyed going out to the gun range today and be able to see that project come to fruition. I know it's been what I think you said, a 10-year project in the making, and so it's really, a great tool for our police department to have, not just locally, but also, to help train, but then also for our community as well, because it will be open to the community. And so it's just a very nice facility, and I know that Captain Randy Ralston did some, really good work along with some others. So it was great to be a part of that, and had a chance to attend the Economic Development Project Update meeting as well, and hear about some of the projects that they've been working on. I also wanted to say, thank you to the Finnet Foundation as well. That's just a great partnership that the Finnet Foundation has with the city and how they work to enhance and partner with us on so many different projects. And, to be able to have that splash pad funded, is really great for them to be able to do that. I'm looking forward to the groundbreaking at the airport on Friday. And I know it will be a very well-attended event. And, we just ask for patience during the construction part because there will be some changes in how you do things. But, you kind of have to go through that to get to what we're building for. And biking across Kansas is coming up this next week in Garden City as a stop. And so you will see an increase in bike traffic. So please watch out for them and be careful. So that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Under?
So I want to say thank you to the Finnet Foundation. It really talks about, they were founding families in Garden City, and just the vision, the long-range vision that they've had for many years. And the gift was, that's a lot of generosity. And also, I just think the way that they really have done many things at our zoo and many things in the other places. I'm excited about the master plan, through the Parks and Rec master plan. There's a lot of possibilities. I really appreciate giving a first look so people can make comments. The indoor gun and training range, I don't even know what it's called, but it's, hopefully it will have a name someday, but it was absolutely incredible. Commissioner Euler talked about the training possibilities. It really takes our training capabilities up just another notch. The facility is really well built, just second to none, and having it available for public use will really enhance just our overall community. So I think we'll have a lot of people coming to visit, just specifically for that. I know that the groundbreaking at the airport has been something that's been long awaited, and it's really exciting. And I'm kind of nervous, I don't know why, just because it's finally happening. You always wondered when that day was going to happen. Our airport has been so well run, and it's been so well used, and just the expectations of what's about to happen is really neat. I do want to say thank you to the public library for coming by. It was really neat to see all of the things, and that they do remind us that there are things for adults also. And then also just welcome to Janet. What a neat calendar, and I really appreciate when you mentioned 4-H and your speaking abilities. I was like, that's really neat. So I think you did a really good job, and I know you and Leandro having a full staff and all of the things that you guys are doing and really keeping our downtown vibrant and vital is really important to all of us. So just want to say thank you, and that's all I have.
All right, well, I have a bunch of stuff too, and once you get to too many things, it's hard to remember what somebody said or not said, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating people. But great pre-meeting, especially with the shooting range. It's a great asset to our community, great asset to our law enforcement, not just police, sheriffs, and the whole range. And it's really neat. I really encourage people to check it out. Even if you're not interested in shooting, it's pretty neat to go in and check out and just see what's built there. Was able to stop by Playchella, that was at Hidden Trail this weekend, and see the support that community has. And that was a really good event, a really big draw for people in Western Kansas. And I encourage that sort of gathering and support, and it was a good time there. Had a birthday party at the big pool where we rented a cabana. That went really well. It is worth checking out if you are taking a large group of people and you want to make sure you have nice, shaded, your own chairs. It was a good time. And then not just the facility itself was good, but the employees did a very good job of checking in and making sure everything was going good. It was a really good experience overall. So good job to everybody with Garden Rapids at the big pool on that experience. Keep in mind, Beef Empire Days started last weekend with the Beef Beer and Boots. Going through this whole week, we had the parade this weekend, a bunch of different events going on. So we have Beef Empire Days coming on, which is one of those things that kind of tells you how much stuff we have going on when I'm the one that gets to talk about Beef Empire Days, and that's one of our big events for the year here in Garden City. Thanks to Parrot Cove for what they did for the library to get that the summer reading kickoff moved over at a very short amount of time, opening up their facility. Sounds like it was very, very, very well attended. So that was good. I'm only halfway through. like everybody said, Finnet Foundation, thank you for the support that they give, not just the city with the projects and the support, but other community organizations, and as well as that, the Western Kansas Community Foundation, the work that they do to help out those organizations that otherwise wouldn't be able to do their missions is greatly appreciated. I'll go through this quicker. Sales tax, we're about on track to be about 9% up over the whole year. That's really good. I mean, we've had record-setting year after year, now we're up. It looks like 9% at the end of the year. The employment numbers at the airport, looks like we're on a record-setting pace there as well, which is good because we don't have bigger planes yet, but we're filling them fuller and fuller every time. So that's good. Congratulations to Janet, and thanks for her work so far with Downtown Vision. She has been around a lot. Come by and stop by. It's been really good. Like Commissioner, I believe it was Under who said, city comp plan is out there, or somebody else said. There's an online way where you can talk and make sure we're actually on the right track. To get that kind of pushed out, that's going to come up really soon, and we'll be able to do that. And then coming up really quickly, I think in 2 weeks, the 18th, is the Silver Sage Renaissance Festival down in Finnet Park, which will, this will be their second year in Garden City, and it should be a pretty good time, so keep that on your calendars as well. With all of that, I think it is time for...
I have just one thing right quick.
For Commissioner Cessna to say one thing really quickly.
Yeah, it's that time of the year where we have, it's starting to get warmer and we have a lot of garage sales. And I just noticed as I'm traveling through the community that people are posting their garage sale signs on the telephone and electric poles. That's not permissible in our community. And I've noticed a lot of people that are putting them in the ground, which is fine. It's just you can't post them on the electrical poles and stuff. And so maybe if our media staff could put something out about that. It just, sometimes people forget. They put them up and then they forget them and leave them there, and it just doesn't make our community look good. But as I've been traveling through the community, and it's getting warmer, and we do have those activities going on, so if we could put something out just to remind everybody kind of what the posting, how to post signs and everything on that. Okay.
Thank you. So I think it's time for executive session. What does this all look?
I'll move. How long do we need? 30 minutes? Do we want to take a break before that, or just go right in? Everybody good?
I can go either way.
I'm fine.
Okay. I move that the City Commission recess for an executive session at 2:45 for the purpose of consultation with City Attorney and Special Counsel regarding pending litigation. Justification for the closed session is to avoid compromising the Commission's position in that lawsuit, and it's provided by KSA 75-4319B2. The opening meeting will resume at 3:15. Oh, this is to include also in the executive session Matt Allen, Mike Muirhead, Jared Coleman, Danielle Burke, Derek Ramos, Jennifer Cunningham, and Tim Searwith Posanelli, which is special counsel. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we will go into executive session at 2:45.